Thanks for staying with us. It's time now to go to our first hot topic. And the Nigerian government has reaffirmed that the Naira for Crude initiative remains in effect, overriding the previous decision by the NNPCL under its former boss, Mele Kyari. Finance Minister Wale Edun confirmed this during a meeting with representatives of the Dangote refinery, emphasizing that the initiative continues to support local refining and energy security. A meeting on the progress of the initiative took place on Tuesday, attended by key stakeholders, including representatives from the Ministry of Finance, Dangote Refinery, NNPCL, FIRS, and other relevant bodies. The session focused on addressing implementation challenges and ensuring the continued success of the initiative. The Ministry of Finance clarified that this initiative is not temporary anymore, but a long-term policy aimed at reducing reliance on foreign exchange in the petroleum sector. Despite potential challenges in implementation, the government is committed to addressing them to achieve national economic goals. Our guest this morning is OLABODE SOWUNMI CEO CABTREE. Good morning and welcome to the program, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So now we are here. We're not talking anymore about whether the deal is going to be talked about. They are in talks on this. They have said it's a permanent solution now. I'd like to hear your comments on what this means really to us as a country, and especially the oil sector.
Okay. Thank you for having me once again. The impact is more towards the economy than even the industry in itself. In terms of the industry relevance, it is good news for the refiners, that is the Dangote refinery, as well as other smaller refineries. What that means is that there's reduced pressure on them to source for US dollars in terms of trying to get payment currency for their crude. For Nigeria as a whole, it's one of those initiatives that ensures macroeconomic stability. In simple terms, if Dangote were to continue to buy crude in dollars, it means that it's going to source dollars from the local economy. And the local economy does not have that kind of robustness to be able to allow him to be getting millions of dollars every day. And what that will mean for us is that there will be fluctuation of the dollar exchange rate to the Naira, which means that prices will go up, which means there will be inflation. So from an macroeconomic standpoint, that is positive news for greater stability of the Naira, and which means an incentive for everybody that is doing business. So invariably, it's a kind of win-win for everybody.
Okay, just clarify this before we move on. Some people already think that this Naira for Crude is only for Dangote, maybe because Dangote's name is always mentioned all the time. And even at the meeting where this decision was taken, that the deal will continue and it's now a permanent deal, it was only Dangote, okay, maybe with NNPCL, which as expected, that were at the meeting. Dangote, NNPCL, FIRS, we didn't hear any mention of any other smaller refiner there or refinery being represented. So what's the situation? Who really is a beneficiary or the beneficiary or beneficiaries of this Naira for Crude? Just for clarification, please.
Yeah, I think it's the government that will need to clarify that. But typically in the past, and when the original Naira for Crude initiative was done, it was made for refineries,
all of them.
But yes, but over the last few meetings, other refiners were not there. So it's those that are in the negotiation that can clarify that. But having said that, Dangote refinery accounts for like 95 to 98% of refining capacity. So even if it is mentioned that it's for other refiners, it's just common sense to know that it's largely an initiative that's most beneficial to the Dangote refinery.
Okay, that's interesting. Now this deal is permanent. Some people say the gains are divided. The refiners might be at a disadvantage, but the country may not be. I don't know if that is true.
So why would they say the refiners will be at a disadvantage? I mean, I don't understand the
Refiners will
logic
be
of that.
at the advantage, like it's beneficial to them, but not much to the country's economy. I don't understand why they would say that, so I'd like you to give your insight whether you agree with that or not.
I mean, obviously, from my previous explanation in terms of the macroeconomic benefits to the nation, that should answer that, which basically means I mean, I'm not an economist, so let's be clear. From my own understanding of economics and its impact, that I think is clear to the benefit of Nigerians. So if anybody is saying that it is not benefiting Nigerians, it is left for that person to explain in what context and in what way is it not benefiting Nigerians. It's not enough to just say it's not benefiting Nigerians. They have to say in what way it doesn't help the whole nation as a whole. And when we get that information, we can now look at it within context and see whether there's logic and sense to such an argument. But until we know what ways they say it's not benefiting Nigerians, we cannot be shooting in the dark.
Not Nigerians. Nigeria, not Nigerians. That was
well, Nigeria,
but
Nigeria
like
Nigerians is basically the same in this context.
Are you sure about that? Because when we're talking about Nigeria making gains, for instance, our external reserves are better, our this and that are better as a country, and it doesn't translate to the well-being of Nigerians on the street. There's a difference between Nigeria gaining, Nigeria becoming better, and Nigerians also enjoying. So sometimes you can also make that dichotomy.
There's some amount of ignorance to that logic, because before it translates onto benefit for the man on the street, you have to have those macroeconomic indices existing. So you cannot build on nothing. It's like saying that, well, because they've just built a foundation and we have not seen a 8-story building, there's nothing happening. No, that's not how it works. There are all those principles, all those principles of economic stability need to be there as a foundation before you now start seeing it as prosperity on the street. So anybody saying that there's a benefit for Nigeria and there's no benefit for Nigerians is speaking in ignorance.
I hear your logic. Well, if you're renting a house and then someone is telling you that someone is building a house for you in the same location or in your village and it's at foundation level, you need some level of faith to say that you are enjoying, because until that house is completed, you will still be paying the rent. So there's always a gap between when you will begin to enjoy and when you are seeing that you will enjoy in the future. So when someone tells you that Nigerians are not seeing it, they are not enjoying it, they have not started enjoying it. So you can cut them some slack in that. They will enjoy in the future, but they need real explanation, they need real proof, they need confidence that this policy is going to give them the gains that you're telling them it's going to give them. But if you keep telling them that we are winning and then they're still suffering, at that point, they will still tell you that Nigerians are not gaining. Until that gain begins to come, Nigerians will be in their right to say that they have not seen any gain.
They may be in their right to say, but they are still ignorant. I mean, the fact that you have a right, I mean,
ignorance and not having faith are different things. Ignorance and not having faith are different things. You might see it light at the tunnel, but it's a different thing.
Sir, what led to this discussion is the initiative that you said Nigeria can be making progress and Nigerians are not making progress. And I said that cannot be true. So the fact that there is progress and you are not yet seeing the progress does not mean it's not progress. So you have a patient that is sick and he has started taking medicine. Yes, the patient may still be feeling the symptoms of the sickness, but there's progress. So that people are not seeing progress and they want to complain and they want to shout and they want to lament does not mean it is correct. So, I mean, it's not my place to be explaining the issues of governance and all that. But facts are facts. And the fact that people are ignorant of the facts and the fact that they want to focus on what is wrong Yes, it's their right, but it doesn't mean it's not ignorant.
I'm thinking that the word ignorant is very harsh. That's why I'm saying this, because if a vaccine, for instance, we will cut this because this is not what we're discussing, but if a vaccine has been developed, that's progress in health. You are sick. You may not even get to the time when the vaccine will get to you and you die. So it's within your right to say that I am not making progress, even though the vaccine is on its way. So, but that's not what we're discussing. We are now digressing a little bit. Maybe I caused that. Sorry for that. Let's go back to the Naira for crude that we're talking about. Now, they have said they are making it a permanent solution. And sometimes we were trying to get to the fact that, okay, why is it even a problem that we need to go back to the table and rediscuss this thing? Why didn't they just make it a permanent thing? Maybe there were challenges. What do you think were some of these challenges, and how do you think that these challenges have been removed, that now that it's been made a permanent policy, there will be no problem that will make us to go back on this policy?
Well, you see, policies are not laws. So when it comes to governance, you have policies, you have regulations, and you have laws. What is cast in stone, at least to the extent that no executive can interfere, is the law. Regulations or policies are what executives use for governance. And in that context, each government that is in place will look at the best way that they think they can run the government. If another government comes into place and they believe that this policy is not the best, they are likely to want to change that. So for you to understand why it was not there in the first place is for you to understand how the industry works. Because crude, largely is a commodity. It is international, it is fungible, it has uniform pricing and all that. So it's been like that for more than 5 decades, where people pay for crude in US dollars.
Yeah.
And it is that logic that continues. And that was what enabled, that was responsible for the refiners, including Dangote, paying for crude in dollars. However, Dangote believed, and rightfully so, that because of his investment in Nigeria and all that, that he ought to get some incentives, privileges. It is on the lobbying of that and on the strength of that that policy came about. And that policy, when it came about, was for an initial period of 6 months. And when the 6-month period expired, then they put a hold on it. And that's basically what has happened. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just a logical sequence in the daily interactions in the industry.
Okay, now that this has been made permanent, how will that encourage, or if it will, other refineries to spring up from in the oil sector, so that there will be competition and so many other things? We hear that some people are also planning to have their own refineries. We don't know how strong that claim is, but how will this encourage investors, yes, that's the word I want to use, in that sector, in the oil sector?
So first of all, when people talk investors and all that, most people don't really understand how investors think. I'm talking about the large investors, those who invest in capital projects. The way they think and what motivates them is different from what people who are not entrepreneurs and who are not in the business thinking motivates them. Investors will typically invest where they think they will get profit. That's the first thing. They don't invest because they believe the condition is soft. In fact, the maxim is that risk return. They higher the risk, they higher the return. So what the investor is looking for is a business person, an entrepreneur, who has gotten his ducks in a row and who is able to show that he knows what the environment is like and how he's able to make the environment profitable. Government policy or no government policy can maybe help or can be an incentive for somebody who wants to build a business. But the person who wants to build a business, his thinking is largely different from the person who is just investing and putting in his money. They are two different things. So for the person who wants to build a business, who wants to build a refinery, of course, it's an additional incentive. But there are many incentives for manufacturers that already exist, from tax exemption for 3 years to, there are so many incentives. But that won't turn a person who's not an entrepreneur into an entrepreneur. It's a donkey cannot work so hard and become a horse. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay. So it's agreed that this is one very good policy, at least for the refiners who don't need to source for dollars to come get the crude and all that. And we're hoping that the oil sector or the energy sector gets better and better, not just by bringing the policy of Naira for crude. So what are some initiatives that, if you had the ear of the president or those people who are relevant in that field, you would say should be put in place to make that sector even better? Because our economy largely depends on that sector, and anything that goes wrong there will affect us adversely. So what are some initiatives, apart from the Naira for crude, that you would like to be put in place to make that sector better?
Hello, are you there?
You didn't hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
So I think when it comes to the industry, there are already a lot of laws. The new omnibus law, which is the PIA, and then there are also a couple of policies with respect to those communities and all those things that are already there. I think what the industry needs now is a stabilization with respect to ensuring that the PIA gets rooted, and because it's a new set of laws, there's going to be a need for it to be checked with reality and to test where it doesn't, and where there's a mismatch with what is operational. The other thing that the industry needs very firmly is the strengthening and empowerment of the regulator. The industry cannot be left to powerful players. There must be a regulator who will be able to protect the weak and the strong, and who will have overall responsibility for the industry. So at the moment, the regulator tends to be hush-hush, tends to be weak, but that is not in the interest of everyone. So overall, in terms of organizational structure, the industry does need strong regulators, and of course the entrenching of the PIA. With those two things, I think there will be significant progress in terms of expansion and capacity for within the industry.
But what is making the regulator weak? Is it a problem of the policy? Is it a problem of the leadership of that regulating body, or what is responsible for their being weak, as you describe them?
It's a new regulator. The regulator is less than 3 years old, and there are many bullies, so to speak, outside the environment. So it's a system. The environment, the regulator needs to grow, not as persons, but as an institution. It needs to be respected. Its views need to. So there are things. It's institutional process, just like the PIA is institutional, and it needs to take time for it to be entrenched. It's not about a person; it's about a system.
Okay, so the system needs to grow. Are there things that the system? Are there things that can fit the system to grow to the way that you think it should grow? Because sometimes you can put an initiative in place and then it remains stagnant because there are some things that are militating against its growth and its strength. Are there things?
Yeah, things like what? It's an industry. There are push and there are pull. So I don't understand what you mean by militating. I've already said that for the things that will make the industry to grow, you need an empowered regulator. You need an regulator that is strengthened. You need a regulatory system that is not going to be bullied by big players. So that speaks for itself.
A regulator that will not be bullied by players, a regulator that needs to be strengthened, a regulator that needs to do this and that. You've mentioned all these things. I am just trying to understand. You are the expert. So if a regulator is there, I'm sure there are laws that are governing that regulator. So what else does it need before it grows? Because if everything is in place, it should kick off as a strong institution. That's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. So
yeah, just like your TV station should, if it has everything in place, it should be the biggest TV station in the country. things don't work like that. Our institutions are organisms, they grow. So I don't understand the kind of question. The regulator is is about 2 years old. It has to grow. I don't know how else to explain that.
Okay, thank you very much. From the expert and the novice in the field. Okay, so I was just trying to wrap my head around some of these things and understand them, but it seems like I'm not getting the right words to use for that. But we'd like to thank you for your time this morning. You have really enlightened us on a lot of things this morning, and we do hope that as this policy has come to stay, Nigerians will begin to see the dividends of this policy, because some people are saying that because of this, the price of fuel might come down soon, and they're using the word might. I don't know if you also believe that it will also affect the price of fuel and it will bring it down, especially in the light of the fact that when the fuel prices globally went down, oil prices went down, some countries cut down the price of oil, price of petrol in their countries, but Nigeria didn't. So I don't know if you also are of the optimistic opinion that the prices of fuel will come down just because of the Naira for crude policy. As we wrap up.
I doubt that policy will affect any price. And then for the price of crude to go down, that's a prerogative of the refiner. What the fact is this: about 80 to 87% of the cost of the finished product is related to the cost of crude. Now, when that price of crude comes down, it is expected that the refiners will reflect that, but they can choose not to. It's just like any other business. If your cost of raw materials come down, you can say, oh, this is a great opportunity for us to make more money, and you retain your price. But some other people will say, well, let us reflect it on the people. And that is why competition is good. Because if one person chooses not to reflect the price based on the reduced cost for crude, it is expected in a competitive environment that the other people will reflect that. So those are the issues that are there. So if other places, other countries reduce their price, it is not government that can reduce the price, because it's private sector. It is the refiners that will reduce the price, not government. So it's not a responsibility of government, it's a free market. It's a responsibility of those who are refining, who can now determine the price of crude. But in summary, the oil for crude in and of itself is not affecting the price. What is likely to affect is that it will not disturb the macroeconomic circumstances of the nation, not necessarily the price of finished products.
You raised the point that competitiveness is a very important thing. Do we really have competition in Nigeria in the oil sector right now, or Dangote just talks what he wants and it happens?
Well, I'm not an expert in competition. I mean, what is happening in the industry is visible for all. I mean, you don't need me to say that. That's a political issue, and I'm not getting involved in it. The issue is that there's been so much talk about the circumstances within the downstream, because what we are referring to is the downstream sector. And it's so many issues. Even the regulator has been muzzled. The government is not speaking as they should. The NNPC has had its own issue. So if anybody cannot see what is happening in the industry, it's not my responsibility to say what is the obvious.
You have already said the much we want to know. Thank you so much, Mr. Sowunmi, for your time this morning. It was a pleasure having you as usual.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Mr. OLABODE Sowunmi is the CEO of CABTREE, and he joined us to talk about the confirmation by government that they are continuing Naira for Crude initiative. We will take a short break, and up next will be the PDP chieftain who has petitioned the Tinubu, that is the president, over assassination attempt on his life. Stay with us.